hear you.
But so what do you think about today, man? I want to talk about you. I want to talk about the podcast. I want to talk about public safety preservation.
Yeah.
I
So I'd
want
be
to talk
happy
about
to,
whatever you want to talk about, man.
yeah,
I
I'd be
want,
happy to share my story.
yeah,
Say from the backside, from the start. But 22 years ago, I did my internship, with a local Quad City Police Department, and it was great internship.
right.
At the time, I've been a police explorer for 6 years,
Okay.
and that's what really got my jaws locked into
Right.
law enforcement or policing for that matter. The Explorer is a great program.
Right.
I mean, people can figure out, say, whether it's fire explorers or whatever it may be.
Perfect. It gives you a
But
little insight.
yeah, it just gives you a taste, whether it's for you or for not for you. But meanwhile, I got on with Dubuque, city of in Iowa,
Huh.
as a reserve officer, and so I had a peaceful, happy-go-lucky, I guess, time there up
Right.
until the end, as a reserve officer, and I had tested to make the list, and it wasn't by any, like, say, snooping, but it was because I was already internal as a
Right.
reserve.
Sure. Yeah. It
I
doesn't hurt,
saw
man.
I saw the list before it got published, and so I made number 2 on the list. So I was super excited.
Sure.
But meanwhile, 3 weeks prior to that, I got called in to speak to the assistant chief, who was captain at the time, and I was a little stressed at first, but I thought it must not be a problem. I mean,
Right.
I don't know of anything that I've done wrong, and two, he's in no hurry to see me, so it can't be bad news. So,
Right.
but then meanwhile, so I get there, and we're talking, and he slides over 2 pieces of paper, and he says, "Look, Gray, I've been lenient with you and it's square with you this far. I let you get in on the reserve side with your first OWI. Why would you hide this from your background check?" So I take a look at the paperwork, and I'm like, I see it's a call list history, and it's my old residences here in the Quad Cities, but I was a victim of domestic abuse,
Okay.
and so uh, it, I said to him, I was like, why would I? It'd be like me being an offender bender and not at fault. And I said, you wouldn't bring that up
Right.
anyway.
Yeah. It's a
And he
it's a
was
it's
just
a mood issue, really.
right. So he was just real to the point, and I was like, what do you want out of this? Like, what's your objective? He was like, well, I want your gun and badge by 4:30. And I look at my watch, and I'm like, okay, well, it's 4:27. So I changed it over, and that was that. But what it turned out to be was just administration injustice. And so he had a problem that I was gay or bisexual, and he had learned of it, because
So
he'd
that
seen it.
came that so he
It was
got
with
he
it was
found
with
that out
yeah,
and
because it was with another guy, and so he was just a bigot, and so be it, the past. I mean, but um for a little
that
while,
was
like,
enough for him to put the kibosh on your career.
yeah. So
Jeez.
I mean, I
What
left
what what year was that, Gray?
2010, the year after Iowa was the first state in the US to legalize gay marriage.
That's bizarre. That doesn't even make sense. And now, if
Uh,
you had told me that was 1990,
mhm.
I would say I would say, well, that makes sense. That was not
No,
a open, welcoming
acceptable,
environment in
right?
1990.
But I also think that as much as I don't like it, I think it's socially acceptable even today among police departments all across the country, or even say fire departments, for I mean, excuse my terms, but a butch lesbian to be part of the department compared to a feminine lesbian, compared to even any sort of gay male or bisexual male.
I don't think,
I mean, maybe in bigger areas it's not so much the case, but I know some
yeah,
people
well, I guess
locally that
that has a lot to do with it probably, right? Because like in South Florida, it doesn't matter, man.
I've got some friends locally that are closet cases. I mean, and I
Really?
get it, and I,
Yeah.
you know,
Am
my
I
heart goes out to
am I
them.
naive? Because I mean, listen, in the past, I wasn't proud of my attitude and thought pattern
Yeah,
about gay men
demographics.
demographics, right? I just, you know, and then what ends up happening is you grow up and you mature a little bit
Right, right.
and you realize that what the fuck's my problem? It's got nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with job performance. So you know,
Yeah,
like let it go, man. Just
right,
let people live their lives, and like, why don't you be more concerned about your own life?
right,
Or once you get your shit together, right, and
right.
stop worrying about everybody else and who they're attracted to. And
Yeah,
I think once you do that, right, once you do that, life gets a lot simpler.
it
And
does.
right, I mean, go
And
figure.
it's not always easy to remove different stigmas we may have in our
No,
minds from let it
no.
be how we're raised. And I'm not saying that's the case with you, but
Well, you know,
um
I got to tell you, Gray, I think there was a guy that I found out was gay, and then I didn't go to his funeral because I was fucking just, you know, again, just he was a good guy, man. And
yeah,
then somehow I felt this pressure that somehow it was a shit move, man. It was a
yeah,
shit move on my part, right? Because I let that define, I let other people's opinions of him influence me and what the right thing to do would have been just to go to the guy's funeral.
right.
Um, you know, since then, you know, you reflect and you go, well, that's one we're not going to get back. You know, that's I think lightly calling it a misstep, I think is being too gracious. That was a real shit thing to do. Um, but since then, I think I've matured, and I think the profession has matured. And
Here's a little bit more about the city though that I didn't know about at the time. That granted, I wish my dad would have told me about since he went to college there, but
yeah,
it's fine. I mean, we all learn for ourselves, but
right.
he was never, excuse me, never a fan of me being a police officer. But um, so Dubuque actually, for example, happens to be very known for racism
Okay.
regarding blacks, and so like I mean, to the point where even in the '90s they were on 60 Minutes for having cross burnings downtown with the KKK.
Really?
That's how backwards the small
Jeez. Okay.
northeastern town is. And
Bizarre.
I knew the captain's son from a side job I had, a department store, and I had thought that he seemed maybe like he was a gay, you know,
Hmm.
but we didn't speak about it.
Right.
But then hindsight afterwards, you know, just kind of all clicked where it seemed like,
All the
God, I
dots
don't
got
blame him.
connected.
Like,
Like,
yeah, like I
oh,
don't blame him for being a call case. Like, God help him. Like, you know, my prayers are with him.
right.
You know, for having, you know, just a father like that. But meanwhile, you know, I've been able to move on past that. I mean, it took me
Oh
many
yeah.
years in reference to not a sour taste to all police, but getting back into the field.
Sure.
And so then I got back into the field in corrections with the Iowa Department of Corrections, and I've never been a know-it-all person, thankfully. you know, I mean, that's not necessarily a blessing if you are, but thankfully I've never been
I
that
don't know
kind of
who it,
person.
well, I know a lot of people that think they are, but yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
right. So I did become say I thought I'd seen it all kind of person,
Oh,
and
they see now I'm a know-it-all because I know that can't happen,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Just when you
So
think you have.
yeah, exactly. So I thought like I was hard to surprise. Well, those people in prison used to surprise me every day,
Sure, no doubt.
and I mean, just the things that they would come up with or
That's it.
do, and
Absolutely. Listen, I've always thought that we've kind of treated our correctional officers in the first responder community as second-class citizens. You know, I think that at least in Broward, there's a prevailing attitude that you're less.
mm,
And I'm just thinking to myself, if the people that thought that had the balls to walk into a facility and work a shift, it might just change their perception on
right,
what that job's all about.
right. And so, I mean, the TV shows that they have out, I mean, I'm not opposed to them. I mean, I'm not all for them because I don't think that they show enough of the angles. In reference, say for example, the first angle they don't show is like how real of a setting you feel when you, even as an employee, when you walk in the doors and you know, 3 to 6 doors like close behind you, so it's like
Yeah,
double
no, man.
sealed
See, that's
and
like that. You might as well be putting me in a straitjacket, man.
yeah.
Like the claustrophobia, right? I mean, like, holy shit.
I used to tell my daughter when she was just a baby, I'd be like, Daddy's going to work release, but I'll be home tonight.
Yeah,
But
no
I was on the
kidding.
right side of the bars.
Yeah, man.
But
Oh my
um
goodness.
so I mean, so I was diagnosed with cumulative PTSD while I was serving as a correctional officer. And ironically, I
How
know,
did that all come about?
well, I was already going to counseling, let's say monthly, just partially for anxiety medications I was on. That
Right.
was part of the deal that I go to counseling, but and I've been going to counseling for maybe 12 years now, but
Okay.
I wouldn't say I have become actively involved as if say I want to be there and I'm participating for the past 5 years.
Big difference, right?
Oh, big
You're
difference,
like just
yes.
showing up to an appointment and
Right, right,
or taking some ownership and
right.
trying to work through the issue.
Well, and part of it has to do, and you know firsthand, you know that not every therapist works with everyone. Like you don't always mesh. And
Right.
in in the past, like if I would find someone that didn't mesh with me, I would just go through the motions to get my
Right.
medication.
Right.
Whereas nowadays, if that happens, which it has recently, like where she wasn't a bad therapist, we
Right.
just weren't making traction forward. I felt like I was kind of neutral. I gave her a try for a few months,
Right.
and I found a new and better therapist since then by referral. But meanwhile, um, you know, it speaks to what you're saying. You know, I mean, when you're there and you're active in it, you know, you want progress, and if you don't feel it, you know, you search for it. But meanwhile, you know, my therapist I see now weekly,
Okay.
uh, and I was diagnosed with major depression disorder since I started seeing him.
Okay.
Um, and
Now,
so,
do you mind if I like and we texted a little bit.
mhm.
Do you mind if we dive into that a little bit
No, I'd like
um
to.
because I know I don't know, right, Gray? I know I
Sure,
don't know.
sure.
Um and the research that I've been doing, much of when we talk about post-traumatic stress, it's not post-traumatic stress.
Right,
In almost 30% of the cases, it's actually a depression issue that's driving, it's the chicken or the egg thing, right?
right.
But I think a lot of times from what I've learned, you check me on this, I might be wrong. I think a PTS diagnosis, it gets misdiagnosed. It's actually depression, and I think it doesn't go treated, and then so we end up, instead of we end up manifesting to the next degree because we're not really getting to the root of the problem. Does that what I just said make any sense at all?
No, it does, and I can speak. specifically in regards to, say, myself.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that to go back to like the prison. So um I went in an hour and a half early, spoke to the warden. I mean, he was a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I would still call him a friend, and I just told him like, say what I had been told in counseling that day, that morning. I was in uniform, ready to go to work, and I said, I don't know if I should resign, and if so, I've always been the type to give 2 week notice, and I was just worried about um not necessarily just myself, but more myself for my family's sake.
Right.
Because say my wife grew up without a father, and so not only was or am I at the time elated that we have a family,
Right. Right.
but I want to see her grow up with a father that she didn't have, and so I chose to resign,
Okay.
and I was going to work on a stressful block that night, which was or ADSEG or um, solitaire
Hmm.
that night, and so that's why I was, trying to make I guess, say a serious call with him that night on
Sure.
whether he thought I was fit for duty or could be too distracted for a serious block,
Right.
and he left a lot of it in my role or choosing. But meanwhile, I had a lot of shell shock from the diagnosis, and I just wanted to do what was best for the family.
Right.
Uh, when I went back to work in hospital security, as soon as I left the parking lot, I, called my old boss and said, of course, I can give you hours.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I mean, there's just a lot of times I wonder, what if I stuck with it, stayed with therapy?
You know what? So I, I, I don't have history with you, so I want to preface, like, I don't want to be a dick. Do you know what I mean, bro? And
Sure.
like, but like, I got questions, man.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
No, and I want you to ask me.
and I think that, and I know that there's going to be folks listening to this
Hmm.
that go that are going to benefit from your answers and
Right.
my questions, because
Right.
I think historically we shy away. We go, oh, okay, man. Oh, I hope you're okay, man. I'm glad you're doing better. And then we just fucking walk out of the room.
Right.
And then nobody's better off for that. Like,
Right. Right.
um, so how how do you how does depression enter your life? Is that a fair question? Like, I don't know.
I
Remember
mean,
how I
I could
told you I
say
like,
I could tell you that I think childhood trauma, and
okay,
it wouldn't be from my parents. I
okay,
love my brother to death, but
right,
he gave my parents a run for their money.
right,
So he was verbally abusive with my parents, and it's 7 years older than me. And
okay,
so there was that. I mean, before I was a police explorer, it was going on, but I mean, it didn't matter if it was like winter or summer, but when there'd be a fight, I would just go take a walk, like in the neighborhood.
right,
And I mean, I was obviously old enough to, you know, be out doing so without my parents being mad at me. But
sure,
anywho, my dad would work long hours as a self-employed person, and he would come home and he'd even ask me, you know, how was he today? And I'd give a honest, fair report. I'd say
mm-hmm,
it's fine, or he gave mom a hard time.
right,
Um, but my dad, was like the law. I mean, he wouldn't put up with it. But
sure,
unfortunately, he was away at work a lot. Um, and then, when I started getting, I don't want to say more mature, but started growing up a little bit more in high
right,
school, I just realized like there's a line that you don't cross, just in general with not just your parents, but with people.
right,
And so I'd start calling 911 because I was in fear for my mom's safety or my safety,
gotcha,
aside from leaving. And then, especially when I made friends with, a captain on the department where I lived and I was an explorer on, I mean, then they'd hear like my family's name come out, and it's the whole team, which is great. I mean,
Right.
don't take it as not appreciated, but
Sure.
you know,
Right,
it
right.
you know, it left some marks, I think, in that way.
So
And
you
that's
think a lot of it's like from just that carryover
I think
ends
so.
up, it doesn't, I've always said, just because you don't think about something doesn't mean you've dealt with it.
Right. So, I mean, that's the only thing I can speak of in my childhood. And then,
Right,
you know, because I had a blessed upbringing. Otherwise, I mean, my parents always provided for me,
right.
and I've learned the difference of having met my wife, who um, just didn't have the luxuries I had. You know, that I first say took for granted. But
Can I
meanwhile,
interrupt you?
yes,
So like, you know how we always say, like, even the worst of days, man, if we express gratitude, like if we find like two or three things to be grateful for, like how that frames our mind for that
yes,
moment and moving forward. Is that something that you utilize to help bring you out of that and put you on a more positive path? Is that like
yes,
a real technique?
right. So, I mean, in reference to that specifically, you're spot on, because my
Okay.
wife and my daughter, they're not only my rock, but
Right.
I mean, they're my passion. I mean,
Right. Right.
I live for my family. And you know, I mean, someone could have asked me 15 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, say what are my driving factors, let it be in a career or even in a church type setting
Yeah.
for an interview. No, it would lead it to professional type goals.
Sure.
But meanwhile, it's flat and simple. My wife and daughter, and
Professional goals. It's almost funny, isn't it?
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
like these are the things we consume ourselves with, and they don't matter to a hill of beans.
right, right. Especially
Okay.
when you're talking about a 5-year plan, but
Yeah,
um,
my year plan is to
stay
to
alive.
grow my family into a beauty, and to keep nurturing and providing and growing together as a family unit. That's my 5-year plan,
Right,
right? That's
right.
not hasn't always been the 5-year plan though.
No, no, but it is now.
Right, man. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, you know, and my wife was ready to go back to work, so we recently made a transition to where now I'm a stay-at-home dad, and
Right.
it's been one of the biggest blessings. Where I'm glad she got that first 2 years
Right.
with our daughter, because she did so well nurturing and
Sure.
teaching our daughter. But then on top of that, they built that bond that's irreplaceable.
That's
And now I
perfect.
have a chance to, you know, build that bond that's not just temporary for now, but forever as well.
Absolutely. Do you
So,
think, Gray, that somebody that's what's some advice you would give somebody that's been struggling like me giving somebody advice on depression, it's coming from an empty vessel, man. You want to know about being an alcoholic, an adulterer, an addict? I can steer you. I can steer you clear, man. I can speak as a subject matter expert in
sure.
that. Um, but like we kind of indicated earlier, man, the underlying current, right, with a lot of our mental health concerns is depression.
Right.
And so more of us are depressed than not. And so what the hell are we doing about how do we
So I'm not anti peer support, but
okay,
I mean, myself personally, when there was peer support available,
right,
I didn't choose to go to peer support because there may have been some very, very, very good people on that team,
sure,
but I didn't want to open up my can of worms or air out my dirty laundry for state of friends. Even though they
okay,
may not have
yeah,
judged me, I just felt like I already have a counselor. Let's stick with, you know,
okay.
going to him for
Going
myself.
going with the devil that you know.
Right. Well, so
Yeah.
I mean, because he was a good counselor. So
Good.
I always suggest people to find a therapist
right.
because sometimes administration a lot of times these days are getting on the right track,
Yes,
and sometimes there's some bad apples out there that
right,
are the old school suck it up buttercup that we know.
right.
uh
That's always, I think that's always gonna be, until that generation, which is my generation
yeah,
of
but
leaders, until
I
they
think
move
there's so
on.
much fear of people coming forward in that respect of them, say, losing their job or getting put on desk duty, light duty,
Right,
just that's why they're afraid to come forward.
right.
I recommend anyone to, just reach out, even if, say, it's the 988 text
Sure.
line, I mean, reach out to some sort of, you know, even if it's your spouse. I mean,
Yeah,
if it's somebody, like, reach out to someone, don't bottle it up like I did,
right.
and keep those channels of communications open to your loved ones,
Right.
because even initially I did bottle it up and not tell my wife, and she was worried, and kept in touch with my mom and said, I don't know what to do for him, I feel
Right.
helpless.
That's gotta be very frustrating for her.
Right. So
Yeah.
then when I finally did open up by the recommendation of my therapist, it just took down so many barriers of
Right.
problems, that I had created when I thought I was safeguarding her.
Yeah. Can I
Uh,
add something to what you said for the
yes.
listener? I get the reluctancy maybe to peer support, but in my case, and it's the only thing I can refer to, I had a buddy that, we bury bodies together, I mean,
Yeah.
and he came to me and it was like, hey, what's wrong? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Oh yeah. And sometimes they
you don't
know.
need to go full blown like
Right.
peer support. You could just have a buddy
Yeah.
that has your back, right?
Right.
Right.
Well, and I'm not saying don't speak to peer
Right.
support, period. I'm just saying do whatever's comfortable for you, as long as
Bingo.
you reach out. I
Bingo.
mean,
So that's the thing.
don't.
You gotta talk to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Don't bottle it up, and just don't be ashamed to reach out, because that's usually shame is what's holding us back from speaking up to someone.
Yeah.
And too many of us have gone through it or lost brothers or sisters from suicide, and none of us want to see that happen to
Of course
anyone.
not. Of course not.
So
So expressing some gratitude, redefining what's important, right? Redefining what's important in your life and focusing on how you can be better so you can be a better part of their lives.
mhm,
That's going to be a huge driving force.
right.
Um, and what,
So I started public safety preservation
yeah,
when I
talk
left
to
the
me. Yeah, man.
prison.
So talk to me about
I
that.
started that just in reach of the mission has always been solely been mental health awareness and suicide prevention for first responders,
Right.
including healthcare workers. And I haven't dabbled into the military side just because I'm not versed enough.
Right.
But meanwhile, I thought, if I could help one person,
Right.
that'd be amazing.
Sure.
Not that I would stop there, but meanwhile, it's been a healthy coping skill for me.
Okay.
So it may take up or consume some time for me, but it's journaling doesn't work for me, but
No.
this works for me to try to help others. And it's just a healthy outlet for me.
Dick,
And
Dick question. Dick
go
question.
ahead. I like these.
I know. So, sometimes we, and I'm putting myself in this category, not that, yeah, no, I am. We put ourselves in these positions to, not, if I can focus my attentions on saving you, then I don't have to focus my attention on me.
Yeah.
Like I can become consumed with again, the same damn
No,
thing that got me in
right,
this position that I'm in,
right,
because I'm an expert at taking care of everybody else in the room at the expense of ever taking care of myself.
right,
And when I started Sometimes Heroes Need Help, I was the one still crying in my office, that because I hadn't processed some stuff and I hadn't worked through some stuff that I was the one that needed the help, but here I am going, I'm here to help you and I'm all fucked up.
right.
You know, that's got to be a big thing that you keep in check, brother.
It is, and I do it with my therapist, and that it's helped that I not only found a good one but that we meet weekly,
Right.
and so it's a good checks and balance to where you bring up a valid point
Right,
because you
man.
can't let yourself go to the wayside. And my wife is very much like us, for say, because she's in healthcare,
Right.
and you know, us givers or us caretakers, for say, you know, we're so easy and apt to take care of others before ourselves. But
Yeah, I
I
think that
always
that's
have,
some yeah, I'm gonna gotta keep you honest on that, brother.
I've
You know?
always told her though that you can't pour from an empty cup when I've seen her
Right.
do it.
No.
So then I've since we've been together now 4 years, I've tried to practice more of what I speak to her.
Good. Yeah, you know what? And that was important for me to hear from you, man. That because we are awesome at giving advice and directing people towards resources, but we need to hold each other accountable to that same advice that we would
Right,
give a friend or someone in need.
right.
We need to be advocates for
Well,
ourselves
and
first and foremost.
you and I in the field, and our listeners as well, we've seen plenty of people who, you know, might get labeled as a psych patient or a person 96 or whatever the code may
Right.
be in the local area. But, you know, uh, too often we see them stray away from their medication. You know, they
Sure.
start their medicines, they start working, and
Right.
then they don't need them. Well, I
Right.
can be
Right.
honest.
Right. Yeah, I've got this
I
licked.
can be honest for me and say that, like, you know, I've navigated through some different medications that work,
Sure.
but meanwhile, even through that pathway, I've never missed a day of my medications where I have multiple reminders on my phone and just
Right. No, it's
nonstop.
just that got the thing that's got to remind you is the reason why I am feeling better is because I am taking my
Hmm.
medication.
Right,
And that's not an indicator for, well, I can stop now, which like you said, a lot of people fall into that unfortunate cycle, right?
right, right.
So the public safety um preservation, that group, you got a Facebook group, um and you started a new podcast.
Yeah, I'm starting a new podcast, and something I'm most proud of regarding public safety though, and that I took about 6 or 9 months to work towards, but I started initially a biweekly first responder mental wellness support group.
Okay.
And the keynotes or the key takeaways about that support group are or should be 100% confidentiality. And, you know, we come to the table and we can just discuss whatever you'd like to discuss. I mean, go in a circle or not, but you know, if you're having a hard time sleeping, John, or say tough time on decompressing from a call or XYZ, I mean, marital issues, just whatever may be brewing on your
Right.
chest. And I know a fellow that I worked with on the police department who had almost 50 years in before he retired, but he told me some stories of PTS from Vietnam that he never shared with his wife of 50 plus years.
Right.
And he told me that he wouldn't see a therapist because I never walked in his boots. I'm not going to tell you or him he's wrong
Right.
because everyone heals differently, but therefore he was a big inspiration for me to get the support group up and going.
That's
And it
great.
took a little while to get the physical location going, then even at that, it took a little time to really get some traction. But I
Right.
mean,
Right.
any new business takes time to get
Of course.
traction
Ah,
because it's a new
because
location,
it's
and
new.
then the word has to get out.
Of course.
So
Of
then
course.
um, I know I have the following I do on public safety, but I switched it over to online only, to where if
Okay.
local people want to attend, they may, but
Right.
it's an online private Zoom conference, and therefore it's secure
It's a lot more
and
accessible.
a lot more accessible. And I've had good attendance since I've switched online.
That's great. And
And
if with your permission, I'll put those links in the show notes and all that so
sure,
people can
yeah,
check that out. And
that's under the public safety preservation events tab,
okay,
and it's scheduled in there weekly
nice.
now. So it's no longer bi-weekly, but it's weekly. Every
That,
Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time.
that's awesome. That's all. And it's again, it's a place where you're not going to be judged,
Right.
and you can. I always, whatever the issue was, I always like would hold court. You know, like, all right, hey, what are we going to do about this? Throw it out there. All right. Give me some feedback. What are a couple different ways that I can attack this problem? And inevitably, somebody would come up with something that you just wasn't even on the radar. You
Right.
know, hey, did you think about maybe doing this? You're like, no, I didn't. And that's the whole idea, right? I mean, it's a place to share, get some information in a confidential uh, place where nobody's judging, nobody's busting your balls, and with the goal of adding value and you working through it.
Right.
Go figure.
And it's even better, because I've some people who have attended, I've given out my cell phone number and said,
Sure.
hey, I know I'm not, say with you in California, but say you've got a new friend in Iowa,
Yeah,
and
man.
you can text or call me any time of the day or night,
Right.
and it doesn't have to necessarily be about problems you mentioned tonight, but it can be about how's your day going, something to
Right.
distract you, or a friend to check on you,
Yep.
and
That's
to
important.
build that buddy system, it makes a difference.
No, and Greg, just listening to you, um, like one of my philosophies when I present and I go to agents, I've been very fortunate, man. I say something that, it shouldn't be profound, but it ends up being. So I said, if we all just cared a little bit more, nothing monumental, nothing superhuman. If we just gave a shit about each other this much more, we could do great things. We could, if we cared about our families a little more, if we cared about ourselves a little more, if we cared about the people that strangers on the street, the guy in front of you who's trying to merge,
Right.
with his blinker on and nobody's letting him in. If we just stopped and took a breath and said, be part of that guy's solution. And it's so simple. I think it shocks people. Like if you just care a little bit more, um, doesn't cost you anything, it's not going to run you in debt. Um,
Right.
and it's the most basic human thing we can do for each other to turn this thing around, you know?
Well, and it's just on that note, I mean, it's no different than how somebody at the bank or the gas station, as a teller or as a clerk, you know, they can give outstanding customer service, and you could be John Doe to them, or another just another customer,
Right.
but you could turn their whole day around because you just never know what's going on with the stranger's, plate on the note of what you're speaking towards. And I had that happen the other day, and I made a point to reach out to the general manager and let them know how kind the young lady was and how she really did turn my day
Sure.
around. And those are important
No,
to pass along.
yeah, feeling appreciated. It all ties in, man. It all ties in. So
Right.
talk to me about the podcast, man. We did we do a little transformation from one to another, or what do we got
So
going on?
so we're gonna I'm gonna make it more open set,
Yep.
where it's not gonna be only mental health related. You
Okay.
know, some of it can be, but it's gonna be all lines of first responders. And just let it be their experience in the field, and what they worked and did accomplished,
Right.
and how that intertwined with their life, and you know what really made their mojo go when they
Sure.
were doing it, or what changes they made,
Okay.
or even mental health related. I mean, I've got um, my first two guests are trauma involved, justified shootings, and so I mean, that can really affect someone long term,
Sure.
um, but it's going to be more open minded to just general topics. I mean, one guest who I scheduled this morning, he's the one who I started the support group from inspiration out of. So we had 52 years on before we retired in Illinois,
Right.
and I mean, no BS or anything, but he is hallmark card of community policing. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah,
you
man.
mention his name around the neighborhood, or around the Quad Cities per se, and you'll hear some stellar
Yeah,
reviews.
he's the guy.
But I know at the same time, from having worked with him, it wasn't all, hunky dory candy time. I
Sure.
mean, he can line some shit up and put you in your place real fast.
Yeah, no doubt.
But
Wow.
he did a good job representing community policing it before I think it became a word.
Yeah, it was before it was this in vogue. He was the guy who connected with people and was had that relationship with the community. Like that's like what we should be doing anyways,
Right.
regardless of the program or its origins. Would it appeal? The community is the police, and the police are the community. We're all in this damn thing together. So the podcast, the Public Safety Preservation Forum and Support Group, um, that's keeping you real busy, man. That's keeping
It
you real
is.
busy.
It is. It's good though.
And so what do you have on the future, man? What's on the horizon? Not that that's not going to keep you busy enough.
Well, I think between the podcast and even public safety preservation support group
Keeping that up
focus,
and running and
yeah.
yeah,
And then a 2-year-old keeping me on my toes.
dude,
That's
you
a
got to
good
scale back. You got
that's
to
a good
scale back.
horizon.
You got to scale back a little bit, man. That 2-year-old's going to keep you running.
Yeah, it's a
That's
good
awesome, man.
horizon.
If folks listening, man, want to connect with you, listen to the podcast, and or maybe meet up on a weekly basis with the support group, go ahead and put some of that information out for the listener right now, and then I'll make
Sure,
sure to add it to the show notes.
sure. So the uh, the notes are going to be a matter of um, it's public safety, uh, preservation.org.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm sending that over to you by notes, and
awesome.
then my email, get a hold of myself anytime, is contact us, CONTACTUS, at public safety preservation.org.
Awesome.
And the weekly support wellness groups can be found on public safety's
On that website.
on the Facebook
Yep.
events, and if anyone needs the Zoom link, say if they don't have social media, which is not uncommon,
Right.
they can email myself for that, and I'd be
And
happy
then
to
you can
provide
send
it.
them the link.
And the email contact information's even on the website. And then the name of the podcast is going to be When the Badge Gets Heavy.
When the badge gets heavy. And what is that already out, Gray? I know
It's
you've
the
got a couple
episode-
episodes in the queue already.
The first episode's going to release on April 15th, which is a Saturday. And then they're going to be released on Saturdays proceeding on a bi-weekly basis.
Excellent. So every 2 weeks, every second Saturday, twice a month for the most part, you'll
You
be
got it.
putting out an episode.
Yeah, and that's going to be via Apple iTunes, or excuse me, Apple Podcasts,
Apple Podcasts, all the major
then
ones like Spotify and
Google Podcasts, and
Google.
Spotify.
yeah, man.
And then I'm also going to put it up on a YouTube platform channel
Nice.
as well. So it'll
Excellent.
be accessible that way.
Excellent. Well, listen, brother, man, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for answering my my digging, questions. I think,
Yeah.
if we don't, I don't think, if we don't ask hard questions, man, I don't think,
We don't learn.
what are we doing, man? What are we doing?
Right.
And I appreciate you being open and vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think that's the way we grow, man. I think that's the way we grow. I think that's the way we become better. I think that's the way we help people, is with our vulnerability. And I appreciate you, brother,
I
for
can tell you that, and I'm sure you can vouch this yourself, but therapy may not be the key for everyone, as it has been a good key for myself. But if everyone can just find their outlet, something more than a gym, and that could be speaking to a friend or even their spouse, if it's not too heavy of a burden. But
right.
if they can find someone to speak to, that's most essential.
At the end of the day, man, we sometimes think we're alone, but I think all we need to do is open our eyes and take a look around. And
You got that right.
in short order, I think we find pretty quick that we're not.
Blessed.
Yes, brother.
So,
Ladies
well,
and
thank-
gentlemen, Gray Reed, thanks for your time, brother.
Thank you, John, and you have a blessed day.
You do the same.
Thanks.